Hello everyone, my name is Victoria Verscher, and today I will be teaching you about sexual and asexual reproduction and what are the differences between the two. We are going to do this in the form of a reading activity, and then we're going to answer our lesson question or our big question of the day. So, what is our big question of the day? Our big question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of sexual and asexual reproduction? And is one type of reproduction better than the other? So our standard for today is the students will be able to explain the advantages and disadvantages of asexual and sexual reproduction. This objective stems from the standard 7-MS-LS3-2. The standard reads, develop and use a model to describe why asexual reproduction results in offspring with identical genetic information, and sexual reproduction results in offspring with genetic variation. Alrighty, so I want you all to start off by, in your notebook, creating a T-chart. Each side of the T-chart should be labeled asexual and then sexual reproduction. We're going to watch a short video, and as you watch this video, I would like you to record the key ideas that you see about both sexual and asexual reproduction. Okay. Here's your video.
Asexual reproduction. When an organism reproduces, it makes another of the same species. Some organisms reproduce sexually. Cows make more cows, and pigs make more pigs. Sexual reproduction combines genes from a mother and a father, making a genetically unique organism. Other organisms reproduce asexually. In asexual reproduction, all of the genes come from a single parent. Asexually produced offspring are genetically identical to the parent. There are many methods of asexual reproduction. In some one-celled organisms, cell division is a method of asexual reproduction. Bacteria cells reproduce through cell division. The cell makes a copy of its DNA, then sends it to the new bacteria cell. Some bacteria can reproduce as fast as every 20 minutes. Another method of asexual reproduction is budding. Unicellular yeast cells grow new cells off the side of another. When the cell is developed, it falls off, and a new yeast cell is produced. Some organisms produce offspring by splitting into pieces. A sea anemone can split down the middle, resulting in the production of another individual. Sexual and asexual reproduction produce offspring. However, asexual reproduction makes genetically identical offspring. Sexual reproduction makes genetically unique offspring. So try taking a cutting of a plant. You will be making another that has the same DNA as the parent. You just helped the plant to reproduce asexually. Asexual reproduction.
Alright, so that video gave you a summary and kind of showed you the differences between asexual and sexual reproduction. Hopefully you took some really good notes on your T-chart. Come on. If you did not, the main key ideas you should have taken away from that video are, in asexual reproduction, there is one parent, and asexual reproduction produces genetically identical offspring. And then move over to sexual reproduction. It has two parents, and it produces genetically different offspring. So these are your big two key differences between asexual and sexual reproduction. Okay, having looked at that, now we're going to move into our reading. So as you're reading, you want to be thinking about our lesson question: what are the advantages and disadvantages of sexual and asexual reproduction? And then start thinking about which one do you think is better than the other? Is one better than the other? Are they both equally important? Okay, so to do this, I would split you into breakout rooms in pairs, where you would each take turns reading one article. One person would read an article about an animal that produces asexually, and another would read an article about an organism that reproduces sexually. If you have a partner to do this list, that is wonderful. If not, in the comments I have included a link to both articles. You can read them both, try to figure out which one produces sexually, which one produces asexually, and then we're going to fill out a chart on each type of reproduction. So this is your chart. You're trying to label 5 key concepts for each type of reproduction. You want to know the relative complexity of the organism, so how big, how small is it, the number of parents, the reproductive mechanism, so how does this organism or this type of reproduction reproduce? What does it do? The relative amount of parental care. So after you have your offspring, do the parents take care of the offspring? If they do, how much effort and time do they put into this? And then genetic variation in offspring. So are the offspring different or identical to their parents? So take a moment, pause this video, go read the articles and try to fill in the boxes. I'm going to go on now and go over the answers to each box. So, we're going to start off with sexual reproduction. For the relative complexity, this type of reproduction is involved with extremely complex organisms. This is your big multicellular organisms that have multiple different limbs and move around a whole lot. Sexual reproduction involves 2 parents, and then their reproductive mechanism is the gametes from each parent joined together. So you get one from each parent, and they come together. These organisms that go through sexual reproduction also tend a lot to their offspring. They usually spend multiple years, parents, taking care of their children. They don't just reproduce and then the babies go off on their own and you're good to go. No. The parents have to take care of and nurture the children until they become old enough and know enough of how to take care of themselves and how to do for themselves. And this type of reproduction produces a lot of genetically unique offspring. We do not look like our parents. Oftentimes, if you have dogs, a parent dog is not going to look the same as a puppy. They look different depending on how both parents look. The DNA is combined, and then you get a new, different looking offspring. Okay, and then moving on to asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction is involved in very simple organisms. These are very small organisms that do not typically have multiple limbs. Asexual reproduction also only has one parent. Their reproductive mechanism is by splitting. It does not involve gametes. The cells of the parent simply split and divide and multiply. There is little to no parental care most of the time with organisms that reproduce asexually, once the offspring is produced, it's already ready to go. It has everything it needs to go off on its own and live its life. It does not need its parents' help, like sexual reproduction does. And then for genetic variation, there is little to no genetic variation in asexual reproduction. This is because you only have one parent. You're not mixing two parents together. You only have one. So you're going to be an identical copy of your one parent. Alright, so having said this, I want you to write this question down in your notebook, which is our lesson question. What are the advantages and disadvantages of asexual and sexual reproduction? And then, after you answer that, is one type of reproduction better than the other? And please explain why. So, let's go over, again, just to review, what happens in each type of reproduction. So, this one slide is a very good summary slide for this entire lesson. Asexual reproduction only has one parent, produces genetically identical offspring, requires little to no parent care, that can reproduce rapidly, and they're very simple organisms. Whereas sexual reproduction involves two parents, they're genetically different offspring, they invest a lot of time and energy into caring for young, they take longer time to reproduce, and it's more complex organisms that are involved in sexual reproduction. So, one advantage of asexual reproduction would be they reproduce very, very quickly. So, you can create a whole bunch of them in a very, very short amount of time. In the video, I mentioned some types of bacteria only take 20 minutes to replicate. That's a really short amount of time. And compared to a human who it takes 9 months for a baby to be ready to be born. That's a long time. 20 minutes compared to 9 months. And other types of organisms take even longer than that. Some animals' gestational period is 18 months, I believe, in the wound. That's a long time. But one disadvantage of asexual reproduction is that it's exactly alike. The offspring are just like the parent. So if something happens in the environment and the environment changes, these types of organisms cannot adapt to their environment. They don't have mutations that allow them to change. Everything is the exact same. So if there's a change in the environment, these organisms will die off. Now, if we look at sexual reproduction, one of the advantages of sexual reproduction is genetically different offspring, for the reason I just said was a disadvantage for asexual reproduction. If you can have genetically different offspring, everyone looks different, everyone has different characteristics, you are more likely to be able to adapt if there's a major change in the environment. The different mutations that you can go through can allow you to survive in these new environments. But one downfall is sexual reproduction takes longer, and the parents have to take care of these children. So not only does it take a long amount of time for you to reproduce, but then you also have an extended time that you have to take care of your baby. So that's even longer that it takes you to reproduce. So they both have their advantages and their disadvantages, but we need them both. They're both very important. Alright, well that's all I have today for asexual and sexual reproduction. Please leave me any comments or feel free to contact me if you have any further questions on the information. I'll be more than happy to reach out and help you. Have a good day.